The Lightning Strikes update is upon us, and with it, some exciting new content, progression, cosmetics, and of course, bug fixes. So in today's video, we're going to be covering not only what has been added into the game, and more interestingly, when to expect it, but also the Lightning Strikes progression tree, major bug fixes introduced by the patch, as well as some of the new bugs caused by the patch, and of course, all the major changes introduced as well, in terms of weapon, vehicle balancing, and more. But to start things off with the basics, the patch has been released today. That means that all of the changes and bug fixes are already active in the game as we speak, but the content doesn't actually drop until tomorrow the 16th if you're over in the US, and well, a little bit later if you're over in Europe. So the specific times when the content should become available are 1600 for Pacific Standard Time, 1900 for Eastern Standard Time, midnight for GMT or over in the UK, and then 1 o'clock on the 17th in the morning for the Central European time zone. That being said then, what kind of content can we expect? Well, given of course that this is not a DLC, but instead a chapter of Tides of War, not all of the content is being released at once. So Squad Conquest, one of the many new additions or changes in terms of game modes that we're getting over this chapter, is the first to release, and the one that we should have basically from day one. It's a 16 players, 8 versus 8, small conquest with 3 flags, spawning restricted to the HQs or your headquarters, limited vehicle access, and more focus on clear lanes and predictable combat in terms of map design and map balance. Now, to begin with, there's only going to be 3 maps available for this game mode, Arras, Hamada, and Rotterdam. I would expect that the way DICE is essentially doing this is, if the game mode is extremely popular, not only will it stick around, but more maps will be added over time. If it's not something that the majority of the Battlefield players enjoy, most likely it won't see an update in the near future. Combined Arms is the second of the new game modes, or additions if you so will, being introduced with the Lightning Strikes update. That, however, isn't going to be coming until February. It's going to include Market Sweep, which is Rotterdam, Desert Declaration, which will be playing on Armada, Bricks and Mortars, which should be Arras, and Bridgehead Blockade on Twisted Steel. The way it looks like from the mini trailer and information that we've gotten so far, this is, I guess you could say, like mini campaign chapters that you can play together with your friends instead of your own. Should be interesting, but if it's anything like the normal campaign, I fear it's not going to be too much fun to play. We can also expect in February to get new elites. Now this is company gear, which is a little bit more special in that it's going to have unique characters and unique best squad animations. Depending on how you interpret the trailer for the Lightning Strikes update, it may also include some unique takedown animations. Those, however, also just maybe new takedown animations being introduced into the game. No word from DICE on that just yet. What we also should be getting in February is going to be a busy month for Battlefield 5, is a new Grand Operations that's going to be happening on Arras and Panzerstorm. So will include the new map finally in a Grand Operation. If you're a big fan of Grand Operation, this is going to be something to very much look forward to. Also, speaking of Grand Operations, Rush will be part of Grand Operations once it launches in March. I'm not sure if this is going to be multiple maps, if it's only going to be temporary, or how this is going to work, but Rush is being introduced in March and supposedly will also feature in some Grand Operations. I believe the only one specifically mentioned up until now is the Arras Panzerstorm operation, which makes sense given that that is the new one being introduced. In terms of new weapons, we have 3 confirmed and 1, I wouldn't say speculated, but as good as confirmed. In terms of the absolutely confirmed weapons, we have the ZK383 SMG, which is a bipodded SMG, which should be interesting. The Model 1944, which is semi-automatic, again, something for the assault here. The 1922 MMG, which regrettably is going to be an MMG and not an LMG, so something for the support class to enjoy once more. It would be nice actually if we could get some more LMGs, given that we've already seen the VGO added to the support class MMG category of weaponry. And I'm going to put forward that the MMGs really don't matter as much in terms of how different they behave, given that once they're bipodded, they're essentially all going to be laser cannons at any range you choose to take somebody out with. That aside though, the Shosha, or more specifically its proficiency and mastery assignments, have been spotted in game, which means that it's most likely coming over from single player into multiplayer in the near future, which should be something to look forward to. I know some of you out there really love the Shosha from Battlefield 1 and most likely will enjoy it in Battlefield 5 as well. In terms of new vehicles then, as already said in last week's episode of This Week on the Battlefield, we're going to be getting the Stug 4, a Panzer-based 4 assault tank for the Germans, but it also looks like we're getting a British tank destroyer in form of the British Archer tank, of which around 655 were produced towards the end of the war, so it was actually used. This is the closest tank I can find to the tank shown in the trailer. It's not perfect, I'm well aware, but given that DICE does take a little bit of artistic liberty in how the tanks are displayed in game, also what kind of equipment they're running with, this is most likely that tank, or at least I think it is. Let me know down below in the comments if you found or know which tank is actually being displayed here, because it is mentioned specifically that we're getting new vehicles, so it wouldn't be a surprise if we're getting more than just one new tank in the coming update. No news exactly on when this should launch, but as far as I would expect, this really should come day one, or maybe it's going to be tied in with the grand operations. Moving on then to progression. One of the strong suits of Tides of War, specifically of this chapter in my opinion. For Lightning Strike, we can expect 40 chapter ranks. This means for every rank, of course, there is either an emblem, dog tag, soldier cosmetic, vehicle or weapon skin, or challenge to unlock, which means there's going to be plenty of content to chew through in the coming 9 weeks. Speaking of specific challenges, we know that week 1 and 2 will focus on the squad conquest mode, just freshly introduced, and will allow you to unlock the ZK3A3 SMG and the Model 1944. So 2 weapons already straight away within the first 2 weeks out of the bag. Week 3 and 4 will focus on frontlines and breakthrough, and will allow you to unlock the 1922 MMG and some form of new headgear cosmetic, which means the 3 confirmed weapons are going to be out there within the first 3 weeks, which leads me to believe that we will most likely be getting additional new weapons to unlock throughout the later stages of Lightning Strikes. Week 5 will focus on tank warfare. No details on rewards yet. What could happen as well, of course, is that the new tanks that we previously talked about are unlocked via some kind of chapter assignment, which means that, yes, they could also come in week 5, or at least it would make sense if they were released in some form in week 5, if that is the week to focus on tank warfare. Week 6 and 7 are going to be focusing on grand operations. The new Aros and Panzerstorm grand operations, of course, is the one I'm talking about. Again, just as with week 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, no details on the rewards here just yet, which is where possibly we could be seeing the Shosha or other new weapons introduced. Week 8 and 9 then, the last outlined by DICE, are going to be the weeks that focus on the return of Rush. Again, as said previously, no details as to the rewards to be expected just yet. In terms then of major bug fixes this patch has brought about, we've got the improved death experience versus clearer communication of who killed you and from where, more accurate UI directional damage indicators, improved vaulting, and fixed issues where some weapons were inaccurate for too long after sprinting and then going into ADS firing. Those are the major bug fixes that I think are worth mentioning. If you want access to the absolute most detailed version of what has been fixed in this patch, I'll link down below the patch notes from DICE if you want to scroll through those to find out if one of the specific bugs you were interested in seeing fixed got fixed. It also has to be mentioned that this patch has already introduced some additional bugs, as one of the commenters on last week's episode of This Week on the Battlefield correctly predicted, regrettably, and amongst them are already that Frontlines is currently locked to 16 players max, so 8v8, just like the new introduced Squad Conquest game mode. This should be able to be fixed relatively soon, but as it stands now, Frontlines has been limited down to 16 players. In addition to that, we've got huge delays between the transition between kill cards and bleeds outs, which means that, well, dying is taking longer as it stands right now, which is a little bit annoying and negates some of the benefits we got from the improved death experience. The revive icon no longer counts down over down teammates. In other words, medics no longer know when you're actually going to bleed out and all. DICE supposedly suspects that this could be linked to the kill card timing transition issue that we just talked about. So hopefully, if they can fix one, they can fix both at the same time. Maps supposedly are being displayed twice in the menu as it stands now, and third-person crosshairs are gone, at least for some players. This, of course, mostly affecting vehicles. Hopefully these things can be remedied relatively soon. Again, one does have to ask, why has DICE not yet introduced a CTE, enabling them to at least test some of these bugs or changes, such as the improved death experience, even if they don't want to leak or show the new content off before it is ready to go out there to the wider public. In terms of major changes, both balance and of course weapon changes, I'm just going to rattle off a quick list of the most important. Half-tracks now take more damage, increased cannon damage from the Stuka BK37, while also reduced splash damage, rewarding you for accuracy on target versus just missing in the roughly general direction of your target. Both tank cannons and Panzerfausts can now one-hit all planes. Thank God for that, and bless the only battlefield moments that will result from this change once more. Aircraft cannon capacity has been increased from 150 to 200, and there's reduced reload times for the rockets and bombs, from 30 seconds to 15 seconds in the case of the rockets, and from 30 seconds to 20 seconds in the case of the bombs. While I understand this change, if you've ever gotten into any of the planes that throw off bombs, it becomes the most tedious of experiences possible. At the same time, we need a little bit more to fight bombers as it stands right now, as they can absolutely dominate a battlefield. Changes in the amount of bombs they have isn't going to make much of a difference here. Infantry players need more offensive abilities to take down aircraft, besides of course the lucky Panzerfaust shot. German aircraft machine guns should now also perform similar to their British counterparts, which means finally, in terms of fighters specifically, the Germans should be able to hold their own more or less against the British Spitfire. Also, we've got changes to scope glint. It's no longer equally strong on medium and high magnification optics and should be visible from further distances. A change I personally welcome, down to the fact that I seem to get killed by people who do not have scope glint but have scopes on their weapon, too regular in everyday games. Also, we've got improvements to footstep audio, louder when walking and sprinting, quieter when crouching and crawling, and lastly, vertical recoil reductions for prone and crouched have been reduced, so there's no longer as much of a recoil reduction when you're in those states, and they no longer stack with bipods, meaning that the MMG specifically should have quite a bit more recoil to deal with now when going prone and bipoding up. Lastly then, in terms of weapon changes, the most notable, I should point out. The extended mag of the 1907 is now standard, which means it comes with a default larger mag, which is nice, but the specialization for it has been replaced with a recoil buffer, so you're not going to be able to suddenly run around with 30 or 40 shots in your 1907 SF. In addition though, it's seen a vertical recoil nerf from 0.68 to 0.82, which will mean, of course, it's a little bit harder to control. The M1A1 has also had a minor recoil nerf, with vertical recoil going from 0.55 per shot to 0.6. The throwing knives have had their range extended from 6.5 meters to 10 meters, and the delay between throws has been reduced by 40%. The minimum damage for the Gewehr 43 and Selbstlader 1916 has been reduced from 35 to 33.5, still giving you, however, an all-range 3-shot kill, so no worry there. One of my personal favorite changes to weapon balance, the MK6 Revolver has had its 2-hit kill range extended from 7 to 12 meters and its 3-hit kill range from 12 to 30 meters and so on. Similar extension going on for the 4-kill hit range. And lastly, of course, SMGs pretty much across the board got reductions in recoils and buffs to their accuracy, with the base SMG spread, that's standing while still and aiming down sight, going from 0.2 down to 0.15. In other words, SMGs are now more accurate, easier to control, and more capable of dealing with targets at medium ranges. Now, all in all, this patch clearly is the first proper major patch that Battlefield 5 is getting, especially because it's starting to address some of the key concerns, issues, and bugs that really have made this game less enjoyable. In this case, for me, stands out personally footsteps and, of course, the death experience and communication of who has killed me, as well as the more accurate directional damage indicators. There's much more to do, that's no secret, but in addition to a host of new progression items and new content, Lightning Strikes seems to be a pretty solid update to Battlefield 5, and I can't wait to get my hands on the new content. With that being said though, I'd love to hear your opinion on Lightning Strikes. Leave your experiences and of course video suggestions down below in the comments, or hit me up with them on Twitter. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And with all that being said, I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you in the next Battlefield 5 video.